I'm gonna try to do a quick video on how to do dog training properly, because a lot of people, even though they have a need for dogs, they don't really like to train their dogs because they think a same vein of thinking as like, oh, I don't really need to teach my kids or like discipline my kids because they'll learn anyway. I mean, some kids are like that. Those are usually gifted kids or very smart kids. That means either their parents are also like that and they're very smart and they pick it up from their parents and how they're doing things, which is something a lot of people don't think about. Or the parents are kind of stupid, but the kid is really gifted, and you kind of need to like be able to train them or hire somebody to train them. But the trick is, there's a trick to it. Regardless of your dog breed, they will respond to reinforcement. And a lot of people say just use positive reinforcement. That's for really bad breeds, mongrels, mixes. If you get it from a puppy mill or possibly a backyard breeder, they may not actually respect you or like you as a person for whatever reason. But the trick is that you have to let them know when things are wrong, when something is wrong, and when something's okay. That's it. And also always reward them. Okay, you don't have to use tricks such as like giving them treats or using clickers or anything. Like, that's actually a bad way to train your dog. That means your dog doesn't respond to training very well. But some people do it like when they're inexperienced in training. Like, keep in mind, I actually don't have any, I have my own preference because I had a few dogs. Hey, stop that. And I don't have any personal training and like personal work experience with like training. This is like kind of a hobby that I did or do. But with dogs, like, the thing is, this is why it says people always tell them dogs are a lot of responsibility, because they like to learn on their own and get into things on their own, and that's really normal. And a lot of things that people don't understand is that, like, during different stages of a dog's life, from puppyhood until adulthood, they do a lot of weird stuff that you may think is abnormal, but it's actually normal, and you can't actually chastise them or try to train it out of them because it's a phase. So right now he's in his attention-seeking phase. That happens with every single dog I've ever owned. So it happens at different times, but always during puppyhood. So attention-seeking phase is intentionally doing things to bother you, so you know you're annoyed by that, or doing things intentionally just to get your attention. So that might be barking at the wrong times, or chewing through your shoes or your clothes, or like peeing when he's already or she's already been housebroken inside the house, or pooing inside the house. That's called attention-seeking behavior. When they get older, they're supposed to grow out of it. If you're not actually training your dog properly, they may not actually grow out of it. They might think it's okay. Or if during that phase you actually reward them or try to chastise them for it, then they won't grow out of it. So when they're doing attention-seeking behavior, it's better to just ignore it. If you consistently ignore it and they're still doing that, just tell your dog no to attention-seeking behavior, and let them know it's the attention-seeking that's not okay, not the behavior itself. But positive reinforcement is like, oh, when your dog sits after you tell them to sit, or he or she to sit, and then the dog sits and then you give him or her a treat. It makes your dog really dumb. Like, you're dumbing your dog down so he or she will only respond to commands, and the downside of that is that he or she will respond to anybody else's command. So if you're trying to train it to do guarding or watching or herding or any other actual work, then you're not going to be able to get the dog to do that, because now you need to command it every single time to do that thing. And you're going to have to supervise it consistently even as they get older, which is kind of like the downside of using treats to trick your dog into behaving himself or herself. Other than that, like, you have to know, the thing is, even while you're training, you have to know what it is that you're training the dog for. You have that goal in mind, and this is your intention when you're talking to the dog, and they'll pick up on that. Sometimes they will learn what your intentions are with different people, and they'll try to trick you that way. Like, they're very social animals, so they know what other people are saying, what other people are trying to do. And if you're not paying attention, especially when they're puppies, they'll be able to train you. So let's say you're really tired of your dog barking at odd hours of the night, or they're digging through other people's yards and you've already consistently told them not to do that, or like they're going through the trash, or they're misbehaving, and you're frustrated, right? They can see that you're frustrated, And sometimes they'll be even able to feel that you're frustrated, and when they see that, and they'll do something nice, like they'll be very cute, they give you a puppy face, or they'll do a single trick, or like they'll do something that you really like, and then like that's only when you're super frustrated, right? And then they'll know that you like it when you do that, so they'll do that every time they want you to do something. So that's kind of how a lot of like the intermediate breeds go about trying to train their owners back for training them. This is a dog thing only. So when you try to train your dog, most of the time there's some sort of like feedback from your dog, because they're trying to also train you. The smarter the dog is, they're also going to try to train you at the same time you're training them, because they're also trying to tell you that I also know what I'm doing, not just you. But they're also very young, and they're a puppy, and they don't know that much, right? You know the area, you know other people, you know what people are like. They don't actually know that much, because dogs only live maximum about 15 years, right? I mean, your dog was just born, or like it's just still a puppy, and even if it's like 5-10 years old, it's very small compared to how long you were alive for. Most kids don't get dogs until like 8 years old or something, between those ages. Some dogs only live that long. So again, you're already older, and you already know more than your dog, and your dog, even though they're quick at picking things up and they can learn really easily, doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. So negative reinforcement is only okay if you know that if that dog does that, it's gonna hurt itself, right? So if your dog is prone to chewing on wires that are plugged in, then you can actually apply negative reinforcement, because that's gonna hurt the dog, right? It's gonna get electrocuted. Or if he likes to jump in like weird muddy water where there's like likely they're gonna contract some sort of infection or disease, or they like to scratch at themselves or like bite weird parts of their body, then you can apply negative reinforcement. But other than that, you can't apply negative reinforcement when your dog sits but you ask it to do a rollover. Like, that's not when you do a negative reinforcement. They're gonna respond the wrong way to that, and they're gonna get confused. Sometimes dogs are confused when they're being trained properly, because they don't understand what you're doing, because they're too young to understand it. That's again with the whole thing with dogs, is that's when you have to know, why is your dog not responding to your training? Is it because you're training it the wrong way, or is it because the dog thinks that it's something that it doesn't need to learn? So again, they're like, I think that's the whole with pack hierarchies. Like, they're gonna consistently try to test you, test your limits, and see how far they can take things with you. They're gonna stress you out the entire time when you're trying to get them to behave. Or if you have a puppy mill dog, when they're aggressive towards strangers, that's really bad. So when they show that kind of sense of aggression and you're applying negative reinforcement, just make sure that it's consistent every time they do that. When they're puppies, when they get older, they're not going to understand it, because if you let them do that when they're younger and they get older, they're not going to understand why. This is specifically dogs, so they're never going to understand why it was okay for them to have done that when they were puppies, but now it's not okay. Like, they don't understand that they're kind of grown, right? Like, they're like, oh, it's okay. Like, people know that. Like, I know some things were okay when I was 5 years old, but now as 27, it's not okay for me to do that anymore or think that way anymore. For dogs, they don't really get that. So like, they can't, how their brain is wired, it's just something that they won't be able to understand. So you have to be consistent when you get them as a puppy. If you adopt at a later age, it's still possible for you to train the dog, but it might take a lot of work, and it will take longer than if they were puppies, because they recognize that you're a new person and they have to get adjusted and adapted to a new person and new situation. So that's already stressful enough for the dog. They might respond badly if they've been either abused in the past, or they're a bad dog, or they were bred improperly. But if they know, since they will know that you're a new owner and it's a new situation, it's easier to train them that way. Like, you have to train them right when you get them, even if they get stressed out. Otherwise, it's gonna be impossible for you to train them, like, if you wait 6 months until they get used to the area and then you start training them. Get used to getting some of their stuff ruined, number one. I mean, thank God with Preston, I don't actually have that problem. Specifically because there's not a lot of people around him that are stressing him out, and there's not a lot of things that he could actually ruin. And I have his own toys. My dogs had toys too, but they like to ruin it before, like, within the day. So, and also I couldn't afford to buy them like $20-30 toys every single day. They're supposed to only play with it, but they destroyed it. So With him, he doesn't actually do that. He responds very well to treats, but again, I don't like treat training specifically because your dog's gonna get dumb over time. They're only gonna respond to food, and they're only gonna respond to commands, and that commands may be responded to even if it's not coming from the owner, which is you. So that's why I don't like treat training, but it's like tricking your dog into behaving, but then kind of because of how the dog's brain is wired and formed, it gets like that. With anything else, I say if you're coming into problems like your dog is intentionally misbehaving every time it does something that you said was okay, then it might be something to do with your dog, not you. But if your dog is intentionally misbehaving after you discipline or chastising it, that's your dog trying to train you not to discipline him or her anymore. So it will go away after some time, after they get into adulthood. So it might be a consistent thing in their entire puppyhood. So until they get into 1 or 2 years old, which is when some breeds get fully grown, is up to 2 years old, they will do that all the time, consistently. And they're kind of learning it from you, saying like, this is how they're learning, you're applying it consistently. They're gonna learn that from you, saying, oh, that's the right way to do it, so I'm gonna do it back to you now. That's how a lot of dogs are trying to like be the dominant one in the pack, so they can tell you what to do and then you respond to it. Such as if you go to the dog store or like a pet store and they're like begging for a new pack of treats or begging you to buy a new toy, or you're just they're begging at home telling you that they want all these new things and you actually buy it for them, right? Then that's kind of how they're training you into doing what they want, because you're getting them to do what you want. And when they're like puppies, they don't really understand that that's not how that works. But when they get into adulthood, it gets a lot easier. But when they're puppies, like, they think that's okay because they're like, oh, you're doing that, I'm doing that, it's the same thing. It's because they're puppies, their brains aren't really fully developed, they don't really know that much. And when they get older, they'll start to see why you said those things, even though they may actually not listen to you 100% of the time. I don't like when people actually do like this thing where they don't know how to train their dog and they're not willing to pay for a trainer, or like they don't know how to train their dog out of their aggression. So what they end up doing is just getting the dog on a harness and on a retractable leash all the time. Again, retractable leashes are only for puppies. If they're medium to small size breeds, if they're a large breed, you're training, like when you have a retractable leash for a large breed dog, you're letting the dog know that it's okay to go back and forth, and this is the amount of length that you're allowed to be on leash, right? With smaller breeds, it's fine because the pull is not going to be that hard and they can roam that much and they won't even actually get that far. But with larger breeds, their roaming area gets bigger and bigger the bigger they grow. So with medium to small breeds, there's a cap on how big their roaming area can be. With certain large breeds, there's actually not an actual like defined area, it's just a general outline. So it's kind of like, this is kind of how they're overseeing how they're living and where they're going. So if you don't actually like have that defined for a large breed dog, which is why a lot of people recommend having a backyard before you get a large breed dog, because they need a sense of like this area is okay, this area is not my area, and I don't have any control over that kind of stuff. With him, it's fine because he's primarily a guard dog, and he's used to guard things and people, not used to guard areas. So if you get a dog that's used to guarding areas and herding, such as this German Shepherd, you're gonna have to give it a defined sense to which we can guard in. And even if you live on a 2-garage, 3-story house with a backyard, that's not big enough for a German Shepherd. You need to actually be able to give a sense of the area of the entire neighborhood, but it's gonna be hard to train him or her to recognize that that's not their area, but they can actually guard around the area too. It's fine. But also you have the problem with the neighbors that may not like dogs and may not like guard dogs. So that sounds like it's not really recommended for people who are on a farm, which is kind of why they bred the herding part into it, because they're like, it's implying that the German Shepherd should be used on a farm in a large area where they can guard a large piece of property, such as like 3-acre, 4-acre property. It's not for a small apartment. Some people actually have German Shepherds in apartments. It gets them to be destructive and aggressive, and they take out that destruction and the destructive behavior out of boredom out of other dogs and other people, right? And that's kind of how they're letting their owner know that this isn't enough of a training for me, or like this area is just too cramped and it's giving me claustrophobia. But other than that, you have to consistently train them since you get them. So their training starts on day one since you get them, and then you can kind of ease up on it when they get older, such like when they get fully grown. And they might need a gentle reminder until they're hit their middle age, which is like until 5 or 6 years old, and after that it should be smooth sailing. But things that stress your dog out: not exercising enough and not providing enough stimulation. And also, if your dog for whatever reason doesn't like you but can recognize you as the owner, which is somebody who can train them, who can feed them, who can actually look after them and clean them, and even if they can't do that stuff, they know who to go to for that kind of stuff, right? And you have to be able to tell your dog, like, even if you take it to different groomers, the point is that I'm taking it to a groomer and this is this person's job. Even if there's different people doing it, it might be easier for some reason others to kind of get that recognized. Most people just end up grooming their own dog because it's just kind of a pain and a headache to put up with their dog misbehaving afterwards, after the trip to the groomer, because they don't know who or what or when or why, and I don't know why you keep taking me to all these different new people and new smells. It's stressing me out, that kind of stuff. Keep in mind, dogs are very selfish. They're not greedy, they're selfish. They can get greedy if you use treats to train them all the time. But they're very selfish animals, but most dogs are. In the case that they're not very selfish, they might actually be very badly behaved. Such as they get aggressive, or like they like to chase after squirrels, or they don't listen to their owners very well. But yeah, with small breeds, like they like to like keep it on a small harness and like on a retractable leash, and that's not okay. Like, your dog's never gonna get used to being around other dogs that way. And also, you're kind of telling the dog that, like, I need you to keep very close to me because you're gonna hurt other people, and I can't stop you because I don't know how to get you to behave, and other dogs are scared of you all the time, and so are other people. That's why I'm doing this. Even though that's not what you're saying and that's not what that means, that's how they're gonna interpret it. So that's also important, even if you have a small or a medium-sized breed, to get them used to meeting other people and meeting other dogs. So take it to a dog park once in a while, I guess. I guess you can take it to a dog boarding. You can just leave your dog there for a period of time and they'll know what to do with it. Unless it's severe, like it has severe behavioral problems, and they'll probably tell you that like it needs to come at a different time, or you need to hire trainers for it. They might even call animal services if it's such a behavioral problem that they're actually legitimately concerned about the health and safety of the dog. So that's that. With larger breeds, you can't use retractable leashes, because once they're on that retractable leash, this is how they're gonna think, because they're larger breed dogs. This is why they separate it. They're gonna think it's okay to roam that far, right? And then when you try to get a leash when they get older, because they're so big, they're gonna break the retractable leash when they get older. So not when they're puppies, but when they're like fully grown large breed dogs, all the leashes that you have on hand are gonna be maybe like 6 feet or shorter, right? And now they're already used to going so far. Like I've never seen a leash that was actually 6 feet for a large breed. The most I've seen was like probably 4.5 to 5 feet, about that size. But anything like longer than that, like it's gonna be hard for you to train your dog to be on the leash, and your dog should know that this is how much space they can get away from you or whatever the leash is attached to. What else? Don't worry if your dog is aggressive. You can train it out of them at any age. But the problem is, not a lot of people are gonna be willing to work with you or your dog, especially at a later age if your dog is already aggressive. And also, if you have aggression problems in your dogs, the best thing is to actually lessen the control you have over your dog and let them meet other dogs. Most dog owners won't be super concerned until it starts becoming a consistent problem, right? Like most dogs, when they're aggressive, they think that other dogs are scary or that other people are gonna hurt them. And then when they get used to other people, their aggression should stop. If that's not happening and they're being aggressive and they're actively attacking other dogs for no reason, then that's when you have a problem. Also, those dogs also can be dogs with rabies. So you should watch out for that for your dogs too, because some people have rabid dogs and they don't know it, because not everyone takes their dogs to the vet. So vets are important, okay? If your dog ever gets sick or it needs a regular checkup since you got it as a puppy, then you need to be able to keep the dog like healthy so it grows into adulthood, because it can die because it's still a very small thing and it's very vulnerable to a lot of things. So you gotta make sure that your dog is in tip-top shape. Take it to the vet, even if it's once a year. And you don't even have to take it once a year outside of your regular vet shots, like your rabies shot and perhaps like some other like I don't know, flea or tick treatment or like Lyme disease treatment or something like that. Like stuff like that, you shouldn't have to worry too much about. You just have to take it to the vet every year, and it wouldn't be like a long appointment. You'd be in and out about like 30 minutes to an hour. Other than that, I don't know what else to say. Just don't be afraid to meet other dog owners, because those dogs are the ones that your dogs are going to have to be familiar with, because they need to learn how to socialize properly. Yeah. If your dog's kind of dumb and you didn't even actually do anything to it, or you adopted a dog, it's like 3 to 5 years old, that's when they actually get put up for adoption. And it's not really responding to you very well or anything like that. Like literally, don't worry about it. Just give it some time. And if you already missed that critical moment where you can start training your dog, I'm sorry, but you're just gonna have to put up with it. It's something you're gonna have to live with. But if you're thinking of adopting or you're thinking of purchasing a puppy, again, remember training starts very, very young. I know your dog's gonna try to convince you otherwise and try to get you to be lazy and not like actually keep doing the things. It's because dogs like it when you're at home all day and they can see what you're doing and they can get pets and treats from you, and they're always gonna be your dog, and they're like, I don't know where you went and I need to know everything, right? Sometimes that's why dogs have separation anxiety. The smarter they are, the more they're prone to separation anxiety and the dominance problems, and sometimes attention-seeking behavior. And I think you should always have some money set aside to be able to replace those things. So it's gonna be like stuff that they're gonna be chewing on, as your shoes, your books, your tables, your chairs, sometimes your sofa. That kind of stuff is replaceable. They're gonna start chewing through it or scratching through it, especially if you just adopted a new dog. Yeah, that's kind of like how they're like testing out the area. But it's a struggle anyway, even if they're puppies. I'm used to larger breeds, medium to large breeds, not really small breeds. I try to stay away from them because it's hard to get a pure breed small breed, as hard as it might be to believe. They can make it look very close. Oh my god. Oh, they can make it look very close to the actual breed that you're looking for, but it's not actually that breed. Yeah. I guess to be a pain in the ass. I'm like, also like a lot of people, they like to hold their dogs, they spoil their small breed dogs, or they get very yappy because most people just ignore it and they just like treat it as a toy because it's so small and cute. And some people, they just want something to like keep them company and have something like to look after. But I'm like, if you're looking for that, you should just get a plant. Like, don't get a dog. They're a lot of work. Even if it's a small breed like a teacup Chihuahua or like a teacup Yorkie, they're a lot of work. Their poos and their feet is gonna be a lot smaller, but they're still as much work as a large breed dog.